show, time to talk cricket, of course, Baz. So we thought we go to the top of the tree here at the Redbacks. Our next guest, Timmy Nielsen, mate. 101 first-class games for South Australia. Former Aussie cricket coach and one of the best in the business. Joins us, Tim. How are you, mate?
I'm well, thank you, Phil. Hello, Baz.
Mate, so many things happening in cricket. It's always hard to know where to start with this. So I thought, I know Negative Nelly here wants to get into about the Redbacks, mate. So I'm going to go down a different road just for a minute, mate. I said 1999 you finished playing. Now we're into 2023. How much has the game changed in your time from that to now?
Yeah, undescribable, I think, just from everything from the support staff structures that are around all sorts of teams, the professional nature of the game from state cricket upwards. When we were finishing in those late 90s, we were still all working and doing another job to be able to support yourself and your family, whereas now the playing groups are fully professional and the international scene has become a mix of playing for your country but also trying to find the balance of being able to cash in on the 2020 franchise stuff as well. So there's quite a pull on the best players in the world, but even players who are decent, and I should be careful when you say decent, but good, solid first class or good, solid state players are getting opportunities to play in the Major League Cricket in America. There's all sorts of different 2020 comps around the world, and they're making a good living and they're doing it on a full-time basis and they're playing cricket for 5-10 years of their life and earning enough that they can hopefully support themselves for a good portion of time after that. So the whole structure's changed significantly from those late 90s, yeah.
And keeping track of these guys as well, mate. I mean, the guys that are playing, because it's not just the one T20 franchise playing, they're playing everywhere. They surprise me. You pick up the paper one day and some guy's playing in America or somewhere, or...
Yeah, a lot of them are now, a lot of the new ones are now, the clubs are owned by the IPL franchises as well. Yeah. There's so much money in Indian cricket and the people behind Indian cricket. So they're almost matching players up to become a franchise player. So they end up playing, if they're a good 2020 player, for example, Chris Lynn plays for us. He tends to travel around to the Mumbai Indians or whatever team that owns these different franchises and gets an opportunity to play there. To the extent now where he only plays 2020 cricket. He doesn't play any one-day cricket and hasn't played 4-day cricket for quite a while now. So, and that becomes a bit of a decision for young players to make, especially if they crack it in the 2020 comps. They get this pull to try and go off into the 2020 stuff on a more full-time basis, which is quite lucrative, but at the same time probably doesn't have the stability of being involved in a state system or a national system where you may get a few more opportunities to fix the ship if it's not going quite to plan. It's quite cutthroat in the 2020 stuff. So, yeah, you take your punt and you try and earn the money quickly, or if you want to go down the path of being a national player, which we're still seeing that more often than not, I think, at the moment. The biggest challenge will be where that finishes over the next maybe 10 years and how often players get to 22 and 23 years of age and decide that this 2020 idea is what I want to do rather than playing for Australia or playing for England.
Man, that's where I'm going with a little bit, Tim. And I went out and watched the Redbacks play it was a couple of weeks ago now, and there would have been 20 people at the game. And it kind of looks like there's been this huge shift into the 2020 and away from Shield cricket. How difficult in your position and Dizzy's position to say we need these Shield cricketers, because that's the tradition of the game, but they're all more focused now on the
I think it's also 2020
stuff.
Yeah, I think it's also what we hope we provide is not just the Shield cricket. The Shield cricket and the one-day cricket's important, but it's the developmental opportunities. It's hard to walk out of a club system, for example, and all of a sudden be competitive on the world stage in 2020 cricket. The skill sets, the fielding, the fitness, and there is a noticeable drop-off as soon as players aren't involved in a state program or a professional program on a full-time basis. If they're not careful or they're not the very best, their performance can decline pretty quickly after that. So we're conscious, especially in Big Bash drafting, we want players that are involved in first class or national systems because usually the support around that means they're still developing, they're still getting better, and they're looking after themselves physically and mentally and technically to be the best cricketers in whichever format they're playing.
Do the young players understand that though, Tim? I mean, because you come from an experience base, they say, no, I don't need that, I need to do this.
Yeah, it's a bit of a challenge. I think probably, as I say, we're still at a stage where 2020 cricket can be a bit, dynamic or even volatile. It can change very quickly. This week I'm the star. 3 games later I've made one off none and I've missed out a couple of times and all of a sudden someone else is a star and they're looking for that next star profile. So I think the domestic stuff allows, as I say, for continual development, we hope, and a bit more stability in your world. Contractual set up in those things is over a 12-month period rather than a 6-week block. So I think most of the young players are realising that that's where their bread is buttered and that's where they'll make the money in the future. It gets really, really hard. You know, you've got guys like Glenn Maxwell and Marcus Stoinis, for example, who are such good 2020 players. They still want to play for Australia, and we would still like them to play for Australia, obviously. But the draw to the big money is quite significant, and even trying to match up a Big Bash versus some of these other tournaments means that financially they're probably not as well off from a Big Bash program perspective as they would be if they went and played in the IL T20 in Dubai or South African T20 and became an overseas star. The overseas players tend to get paid more money than what your local stars do, just the way it works out. Yeah.
If a young guy comes into the SACA and he's just been offered a little sneaky contract to go and play T20 somewhere, hasn't done it before, but he's a powerful hitter, he wants, you know, whatever. Is there someone at the SACA that actually sits him down and goes, okay, mate, this is what life's all about here? Yeah. As far as going to T20 and forgetting the Shield stuff?
Yeah, we have those conversations on a regular basis, Baz. That's probably what our roles are. We do contract in a state program, or Australian cricket contracts are for a 12-month period, and we're very, very unlikely to let players go and play in a 2020 competition during our domestic summer. We want them playing in Australia, we want them playing Big Bash, so our best players are here. We do support and try and pick the right ones for different players during our winter months so they get away and play some competitive cricket. Cricket has the benefit, I reckon, of probably unlike footy codes and that sort of stuff. Maybe soccer's a bit similar in that they can go and play overseas in different tournaments, different leagues, so they continually get competition, which is the best way to learn. So Mitchell Johnson, Spencer Johnson's a great example at the moment where he's kind of come from the clouds a little bit after a long period of time where he had some injuries. He's really got fit, going well, got a bit of a run with the Heat last year, and now he's playing in the 100. He's played in the MLC, the Major League Cricket in the US. He's just been selected to play for Australia in the 2020 tour at the end of the one-day World Cup over in India. So 2020 cricket for him is becoming a real focus. We'd love to see him playing some Shield cricket as well, and that's the balancing act, trying to get him fit enough and enough bowling in his system that he can cope with bowling 30 overs in a game and back up again and do it next week.
Okay, have you been following the World Cup, mate?
I have quite a bit.
Pretty close. Yeah. It's been an interesting World Cup, hasn't it?
You
know, you wouldn't have picked England to be sitting at the bottom of the ladder.
When you would pick Afghanistan to be playing in the semi-finals.
Well, they're a chance to make semis, which is quite staggering. But mate, I don't know how you feel about this, but I've been watching the games really closely, and I'm just not a great fan of picking Smith and Labuschagne. I don't know why. I just don't think. But I looked at the game the other day where Warner and Head got away. Bang, they're away. 150 in 16-8. It was staggering batting. It was magnificent. But then you get a guy who comes in and makes 18 off 27. I just didn't think we needed that at the time. Whereas if we do get away, and you've got, say, a Green, Stoinis, pick these type of blokes, they're hitters. They'll just keep the momentum going. And I know that probably Smith's in there to maybe, stabilise an innings and bat for a long period of time and make a big score. But I just think, I don't know, I think that the way that one-day cricket's going, it's even going more into the 2020 mode than one day.
I think that's the biggest thing, is that because the influence of 2020 has seen the different phases of one-day cricket become almost like the first 10 overs is like opening batting in 2020 cricket. The other night saw David and Travis just go nuts, and as you say, they're 160 off 16 overs. There is a period post that where there's a consolidation and trying to set it up for that last 10 overs, because there's nothing that's unchaseable anymore.
That's right.
In the old days, I remember when I was coaching, if we got a gap between the number of runs we cried and the number of balls left, if we got it to 20, so if you needed 50 runs off 30 balls, it was almost put the cue in the rack, they're not getting them.
Yeah.
It was done. That was just how it worked out, and that was always a focus. Let's build the difference to 20, and that was a target.
Yeah.
20 now, that's an over's worth. It's all over. You're never defending that as a playing group. The power and the ability and the fearlessness and the way they play, it just means it's such a different game. I tend to agree personally regarding Smith and Labuschagne. I think you can probably afford to have one, but two is a bit of a luxury, and they need to be careful. But when you have the depth they have in their batting order with the likes of Maxwell, even Inglis at the moment, Carey when he was playing, that's when they probably need to be a bit flexible and say, okay, it's time to slot you up a bit higher, and we want to try and keep the rate going rather than consolidate now and maybe slow things down a little bit.
See, Carey could even play as a bat to me. That's what I thought. Okay, if you want to pick Inglis, he's a good hitter of the ball, cricket ball, Inglis, and not a bad keeper. But Carey could still play in that. in that order, I think, because he's a terrific one-day player.
I'd go the other way, Baz. I think he's probably the better keeper of the two.
Yeah.
And Inglis could certainly play as a batsman and have the ability to roll up and down the order anywhere from 5 or 6 down to 7 or 8, depending on the role they'd like him to play on that day.
Yeah.
I personally, and I'm biased, I felt Carey probably copped the wrath of the fact that maybe Maxwell and Stoinis and a few of these guys had been a bit inconsistent and they were worried about the run output.
Yeah.
So they went to Inglis with that idea rather than putting the heat on the batting group to say, no, we need to make more runs or we replace one of the batsmen. So the keeper actually copped in the neck for that. And as you can imagine, I'm a little bit biased in that regard. Both South Australian and from a wicket-keeping point of view, I thought he probably deserved the opportunity to continue being the keeper in the side.
Fair.
Okay, mate, we nearly need to wrap it up. So quick fire questions, mate.
Yep.
You can rate them disappointing, good or work in progress.
Yep.
Redbacks?
Work in progress.
Work in progress. The under-19 Premier Cricket?
Yeah, good. Really started well this weekend. We lost our first game against Prospect, but it was great to see a group of young kids no bye in Premier Cricket, which is now a real positive thing. 2 tiers, 2 divisions, so it's different. There's a bit of pressure on, and every game's going to mean something. So good.
Rhino coming in as the bowler? Coach?
Good. Yeah, he's learning, developing, and a ripping bloke. So he's created a really good relationship with our bowling and our team, and really will have an impact, I think.
The batsman?
Work in progress.
Work in progress.
Yes.
Mate, always great to catch up with you, Tim. We could talk forever, mate. We could take the whole show, have Tim Nielsen as our special guest.
We could, actually.
We could. Stay with us still. More to come on the show.